We're going to be, in about 1 minute, we'll be ready to have those who are in the background to give us the go ahead to get started. We have our chair here. I see that Rob is joining us. And Rob, if you'll unmute and give us an audio check, please.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Okay, I see Council Member Barbara Gertman has joined. If you will, please unmute your microphone and do an audio check for us.
Good morning.
Good morning. Very nice to have you. Thank you so much. Okay, Leilani, we are just about ready to take off.
Okay, we started recording and I got a head start on our YouTube, so we are live, and whenever Mayor Tyler is ready to go.
Okay, Mayor Tyler, you are ready to go. We're ready to go as in whenever you're ready.
We're good.
Okay, young lady, I had to mute again there for a second.
Okay.
All right. I'm ready if you say we can go now.
We can go now. You can go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Okay. I'll be calling this Central Florida Metropolitan Planning Organization meeting to order. Welcome to this virtual Central Florida MPO Alliance meeting. I'm Roy Tyler, in case I haven't met everybody who's still involved. I'll be chairing the meeting today. We also have a team of folks working to ensure this meeting runs smoothly. And with me as a member, that'll be a challenge. Today's meeting was advertised as required in the Florida Administrative Weekly, as well as through targeted emails. Florida's Sunshine Law typically requires a quorum to be physically present in a room for a government meeting. However, Governor DeSantis suspended this requirement in an executive order, allowing government boards to conduct business doing virtual meetings. So now that it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance today, I'll ask Commissioner Cheryl Graham to lead us in the pledge. Everyone else, please remain on mute.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, there has been a slight change with that one. We have asked Mayor Meehan in the absence of Commissioner Grebe.
All right, Mayor, we would follow your lead.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The printed agenda calls for introductions at this time. However, this environment doesn't quite lend itself to introductions as we would conduct them if we were in person setting. So we will now allow the roll call. We will be conducted later to stand as the introductions, so that the public is aware of who is representing them in this meeting. I have no additional comments. So at this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Whittington for some meeting guidelines and agenda review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and good morning to all of the Central Florida MPO Alliance members and those who are attending online. Thank you for joining us for the Central Florida MPO Alliance virtual meeting. Today's meeting is accessible to the public by computer, tablet, or phone. A recording of this meeting can be accessed later on Metropolitan Orlando's YouTube channel. You'll find links to the YouTube channel and to the meeting agenda in the chat box, which is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. As the chairman stated, Governor DeSantis issued an executive order which extended the ability of local governments to meet virtually. However, we note today that no formal actions will be taken during this meeting. Items that are being presented will be advanced based on consensus reached as a result of discussion that will take place. This enables us to continue our continuous, cooperative, and comprehensive transportation process. We have a few guidelines that we'd like to share so that things will flow smoothly. We'll be using the raised hands feature to recognize Alliance members and staff who wish to speak and to call on members of the public during the public comment period. If you've joined us on the phone only and do not have access to a video screen, please use *6 to mute and unmute your line, and *9 can be used to raise your virtual hand so that the meeting hosts can see that you wish to be recognized. You'll see that there's a chat feature in your toolbar. This communicates with all panelists in this meeting, which includes Alliance members, staff, and presenters. Please only use this if you are having technical difficulties or if you need assistance. A full record of the chat comments will be included in the public record of this meeting. During the public comments period, members of the public joining us today who want to make public comments can use the raise hands feature that's found at the bottom of your screen. If attending by phone in listen mode only, you can hit *9 to raise your hand and to request to be recognized. When you're called on, your microphone will be temporarily unmuted. Now you will again have to use *6 in order to do that. And we'll ask you to state your name and contact information for the record. I'd like to also caution the members who are joining today that during the times that your camera view is turned off during the meeting, you will not be visible to the viewing audience, nor will you be visible during the playback. So when viewers watch this later, they will not see that you are present. In other words, you won't show up and the participants will not see you unless your camera view is on. So, Mr. Chairman, we are prepared to move forward with the agenda as it's printed at this time. And I would, with your permission, like to call on Lisa Smith to conduct a roll call of the Alliance members and staff.
Go right ahead.
Good morning, Alliance members. If you could please go ahead and unmute yourselves for the roll call. And you can go on mute again once your name is called. And please make sure that your video on so that I can confirm that it's you. You will find your unmute and video buttons on the bottom left side of your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Please say here or present when your name is called. Commissioner Emily Bonilla. Commissioner Leslie Campion. Commissioner Chris Cloudman.
Here.
Commissioner Barbara Gertman.
Here.
Mayor Kathy Meehan.
Here.
Commissioner Yvonne Minus. Commissioner Christine Moore. Commissioner David Moore. Commissioner Christine Power.
Here.
Commissioner Michelle Stone.
Here.
Commissioner Roy Tyler.
Here.
Commissioner Andrea Young.
Here.
Commissioner Jason.
Did that put you?
For the staff director, Mr. Baum.
Let's see.
Here.
Ms. Bolenbeck.
No, still.
Mr. Cordick.
Here for Chandra Frederick, Executive Director.
Ms. Gillette.
Here.
Mr. Hutman.
Here.
Mr. Woods.
I'm here.
And I see Commissioner Grieve has now come into the meeting. So we have a quorum, Ms. Virginia. And Mayor Tyler, we have.
And Lisa,
Thank you.
for the record, I'll just let you know I am here. I didn't get off mute fast enough.
I saw you.
That.
And me too, minus.
Yes, I saw you.
All right.
I marked you present.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, we're prepared to move to public comments now.
Okay, well, I will open this portion for public comments. If any members of the public wish to comment, please use the raise your hands function and you'll be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad will unmute your mic. After you are recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes, please.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I don't see any hands that are raised to be recognized. So I think it's safe to say that we don't have any public comments.
Okay, are there any written or phone comments that would be submitted before the meeting?
We did not receive any written comments nor phone messages prior to the meeting.
All righty. We can move now to our reports. Thank you, members. We will now move to those items. Delegation reports, which are information only in tab 1 of the agenda. Any hands, Ms. Whittington?
Don't see any hands from any of the members who may have questions. Let me just give it a moment just in case.
Okay.
There are no raised hands, Mr. Chairman.
All right, our next item is Florida Department of Transportation district reports. We will now hear district reports. Let's start with District 1. Ms. Nicole Mills is sitting in for Secretary Nadam. Today, Ms. Mills, you're recognized for your report.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Secretary Nandum sends his apologies. He can't be here today. He's attending another meeting with Collier County. Hopefully we'll get him here at the next meeting. As for District 1, we are waiting on our funding allocations to come in from the central office. They are running a little bit late, but we're expecting them any day. The outcome does not look good. We're looking at where we can trim our budgets, and we're hopefully keep our projects in our work program, but at this point, we're not sure. Nothing's a guarantee at this point until we get our allocations. As for projects in the area, the I-4 managed lane study is starting. It's gearing up, and we're looking at our traffic reports on that. The I-4 US 27 interchange project, we are looking at the design on that and seeing where we can come up with some innovation to reduce the cost to save the project so we don't have to move it out. That's a very important project for the district and for the region to get that interchange constructed. So we have some really good feeling on what we've seen so far, and we will keep you up to date as we know more. We're looking at December for some estimates on that. The US 27 mobility study that team has been coordinating with the Turnpike, and I believe there is a joint meeting with the Polk TPO December, I think, as to what the outcome of that study is. And MCORS, everybody's watching that the task teams are ongoing. I think some of you have been watching that. Secretary Nandum is the lead for the project within District 1, going from Alligator Alley up to Polk County, somewhere along I-4. And I haven't participated on that, but he's all over that. And I know Polk TPO has been a big part of it also. So if you have any questions, you can ask, or I can respond on email later on to you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Mills? If not, Ms. Mills, I was in TPO meeting for Polk in District 1 yesterday, so I still have transportation on the brain, and I am following right along. And I think probably all our districts are going to be facing the same hurdles. Staff, are there any hands raised?
There are currently no hands, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, we'll move on to District 5. Ms. Kelly Smith.
Good morning, everybody.
Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Kelly Smith. I have a couple of announcements. We just wanted to pass along the information that John Tyler was selected as our Director of Operations on July 17th. John was previously our district's construction engineer. The next announcement would be that the district's public work program public hearing is scheduled for December 7th through the 11th, with the in-person portion taking place on the evening of December 10th. We'll be working with the MPOs to get that information as we kind of solidify those plans. And the last announcement, kind of similar to Ms. Mills, is that the district hadn't received the revenue allocations at this point, but we'll continue to keep the MPOs informed once we get the information. And as we've communicated, we are expecting some impacts to the work program, and we'll be working collaboratively with them through that process. That's all I have. If anyone has any questions.
Are any questions for Ms. Smith? Any hands?
Don't see any hands, but let me just give it 1 second. No virtual hands, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Our final report is from Mr. Sayalsi Fine from Florida's Turnpike Enterprise. Mr. Fine.
Good morning, Alliance members. Florida's Turnpike Enterprise will hold a public hearing for the Turnpike mainline widening from south of Kissimmee Park Road to US 192, the PD&E study, on Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. It will begin with a looping informational video at 5:30 p.m. A formal presentation will begin promptly at 6 p.m., followed by a public comment period. The department is providing several participation options. You may participate virtually online via a computer, tablet, smartphone, or by telephone, listen-in only mode. Alternatively, you may participate in person by going to the Osceola Heritage Park Event Center, which is at St. Cloud's Room, 1901 Chief Osceola Trail, Kissimmee, Florida, 34744. All attendees will participate in the same live virtual public hearing. Registration for the GoToWebinar will be available on the project website, www.turnpikestcloud.com, starting Monday, October 19th. That is the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Fine. Are there any questions? Staff, again, are there any hands raised?
Don't see any at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll move to some discussion and consensus items. Just a quick reminder, we are not doing any formal action in these. We're just making these available for your review so that when formal action is taken, we'll be abreast of those things. I believe the meeting minutes of July 10th are included in the packet that you can access on this channel. 2021 proposed meeting schedule, I believe, is also there. There are some things that usually are a bit in flux, and that's when we have our joint meeting with West Central Florida Chairs Coordinating Committee. It's still tentative and will be confirmed after coordinating with our partners from the West Coast. Are there any questions, comments, or major conflicts that we may be made aware of? If so, please use the raised hand feature to be recognized. Any concerns there, Ms. Whittington?
I don't see any hands, Mr. Chairman, nor are there any concerns that have been expressed so far. And again, we will coordinate that July date with our partners from the West Coast to confirm that joint meeting that we usually have.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And I believe this is that time of the year when we select and appoint officers, or we present the ticket. And Ms. Whittington, if you would do that for us.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, you do have a hand by Commissioner Stone, maybe on that last item.
Okay, Commissioner Stone.
Thank you. Mayor and Chair. I'm just questioning the date in October. Is that actually going to be a Saturday meeting, or is the date to be on the 8th of Friday meeting?
It is more likely the Friday meeting, and that may be a typo. And so thank you so much for bringing that to our attention, and we will make that correction.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for Ms. Whittington about meeting dates? I was not that concerned, Ms. Whittington. Saturdays are yard maintenance day at my house, and I would have gladly attended a meeting as an excuse for not doing that, but the mayor, ever vigilant, has removed that opportunity.
Well, I am
We have a regional list of priority projects. Can you also update us there?
Well, we need to just call attention to the proposal that staff is making in order for us to ensure we have officers for next year. Nothing about 2020 has been normal or ordinary. And under normal and ordinary circumstances, we would conduct an election of officers at this meeting. However, there has not been much for the Alliance to be able to advance. And so our proposal is that we maintain the current slate of officers, which is Mayor Tyler as the chairperson, Commissioner Stone as vice chair, and Commissioner Greed as the secretary. And without any objection to that, that slate of officers would move forward to 2021. And Mr. Chairman, this did go out in the agenda, and we didn't hear any opposition from anyone, nor the officers who are currently serving. So we were grateful for that.
Well, I believe the regional list of priority projects, which I may have skipped to prematurely, is that Ms. Lois Ballenbach is going to do that for us.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of time to go ahead and talk about the regional list of priority projects that we developed through the Central Florida MPO Alliance. I presented a draft of that document and set of tables last meeting. As a reminder for those of you that are looking through this, we develop those priorities in a variety of categories: the strategic intermodal system, the regional trails, regional transit projects, and transportation of regional incentive program, or TRIP. So between what you saw last month and what was included in your packet this month is that the tables themselves have just been put into a final format, meaning the additions that were highlighted previously have been changed into the same font and not necessarily highlighted or bold faced. The strike throughs have actually been removed at this point or moved to the appropriate lists if they've moved from one to another. And then we added 2 projects onto the TRIP list, which I mentioned during the last presentation. We were waiting for Ocala Marion to finalize their TRIP projects, and they did so, and we've added those to the TRIP listing. Otherwise, everything remains as it was presented last time. And I want to remind everybody the Tier 3 trails listing, these are often projects that will be applied for at the open call for project for SunTrail funding, which opened on October 1st and runs through the end of December. So this is good timing for us to wrap this process up. Happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Are there any questions? Apparently you've done an excellent job, Lois. I don't see any questions up here. We'll move to presentations. We have two presentations on today's agenda. Please use the raised hand function to be recognized if you want to ask a question of the presenter. You may raise your hand during the presentation to indicate that you want to ask a question, but we will hold all questions until the presentation ends. If you're having audio issues, you can type your question into the chat box and a moderator will relay your questions. Our regional TSMO program of Mr. Hill.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Tyler and members of the Alliance. This morning, I just want to give you an update on the progress we have made since the Regional Transportation Summit we had with the joint MPOs in July regarding the whole concept of advancing and improving transportation systems management and operations with the MPOs within Central Florida, as well as with the FDOT districts. Next slide. So at our Regional Transportation Summit on July 10th, we ended that meeting after the presentation on transportation systems management operations with a resolve to participate in this effort, to identify champions, and these would be either policy board members or staff that would champion your MPO's transportation systems management operation TSMO efforts, and for us to reconvene at some point to have this more structured. Next slide. So this graphic I'm using to only illustrate that on the left you see the MPOs that originally we, Metropolitan Orlando, approached to develop this concept. And after or during the July 10th meeting, there was two other MPOs that were added, and that's, or TPOs, that was River to Sea and Space Coast, were added to this group of MPOs to further transportation planning in the TSMO area. Next slide. So we did have a follow-up meeting after the July 10th meeting, and it was on August the 21st. And during that meeting, there were several things that were discussed. First was the whole idea of a memorandum of understanding between the agencies. And this would just be between the MPOs and TPOs. And this would be an agreement or commitment to advance this whole concept of TSMO planning through Central Florida. We had a list of members. This included local as well as the districts, FDOT districts as members as part of this group. And then decision making. How do we get the MOUs executed? What is the process that each of the MPOs or TPOs need to go through to execute a MOU? And then some of the work that staff has been doing in the background, and this has to do with how do we sustain this effort? And what we identified is grant opportunities, the State Transportation Innovation Council that provides funding. And we see this concept as something that can be funded through this council. So we put together an application and submitted it. And I'll discuss a little bit more in the next slide on this application. Next slide. So we submitted it, and the application looked at the operation and safety issues within Central Florida, mainly along the I-4 corridor, but it goes beyond just the I-4 corridor. The economic challenges. One of the things that our former executive director used to fondly say is that transportation is economic development. And so the operation and safety issues that occur on our roadways impede our economic advancements in some ways. And then the innovative opportunities that come through TSMO strategies not only within transportation, but outside of transportation. And we did receive an award, and the award is for $100,000. Next slide. So next steps, we have a second meeting scheduled for October the 21st, where we want the MPOs, TPOs to report on what steps they've taken to get the MOUs executed. I believe some have already started to take some steps. And regarding that MOU, one of the MPOs did request Paul Gugelman, who's the attorney for the MPO AC, to review the MOU. The draft that we had been reviewing was reviewed by Paul, and he made some changes to it, and that has already been shared with the MPOs, TPOs. I mentioned already what steps will need to be taken. And since we're not really asking the MPOs or TPOs for anything other than their commitment and some staff time to work on this effort, we don't anticipate a whole lot of challenge in getting them executed. The next item is governance. Right now, this whole process or effort, it's not a process, but effort has been ad hoc, if you will. And so we would like to have some formalized structure or framework for us to work in so that we can identify some goals, objectives, some low-hanging fruit so that we can show the true merits of TISMO at a regional scale, and to help in sustaining this work that we've started. The next one, Mid-Central Corridor Coalition. Right now, or let me say this, the name, what we refer to this work as, has evolved over the last year and a half. Initially, it was TISMA Regional Program, and it's been suggested that we refer to it as Mid or Central Corridor Coalition, because we are going, initially while we were looking at just the I-4 corridor, you see based on the graphic I showed earlier that the number of MPOs that are involved, some of them are outside of the I-4 corridor. So we are touching on Central Florida, Mid-Central Florida, and the branding of this needs to be determined. And then it's been suggested that we include Central Florida Expressway in this effort, not necessarily as a signer of the MOU, but as someone to participate since they impact Central Florida, as well as the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority on the West Coast or the west side of the state. Both agencies, it's been suggested that we approach them to include them in what we're developing. Next slide. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation, and I am ready to respond to any questions or comments.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Hill? Any hands raised?
I don't see any hands raised at this time. No.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hill. Looks like a pretty initiative-based undertaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next, I believe, is a presentation of preliminary discussion on the 2021 legislative session. And we have two presenters, I believe. Carl, you're up first, and Ryan, you're next.
Thank you. My name is Carl McKiska. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida MPO Advisory Council, and I wanted to walk through a little bit related to the legislative policy positions of the Florida MPO AC. We are the collaboration of 27 Florida MPOs representing transportation urban interests across the entire state. And I'm pressing the forward button, and I'm not getting it to go.
Okay,
There it goes. I apologize. So this is our policy positions update. And annually, we prepare a brochure. You can see it on the right-hand side of your screen. This brochure is from our last legislative session. We have not developed the new one because we are still developing the language that will go into this. But this list of priorities is suggested by the staff of MPOAC to our staff directors or the executive directors of each of the 27 MPOs. And after they have refined those legislative policy positions, they are then forwarded to our governing board, who makes a final decision. And that then develops our platform each year. So I want to walk you through what has changed from the 2020 policy positions to the proposed positions for 2021. They've been through the staff directors and they will be shown to the governing board. So the first one is, we've always had as our first legislative policy position during my tenure, money. Money is what makes transportation go forward. And so we've always had as our first policy position the idea that we want to make sure that our transportation funding going forward is stable, is adequate, and that we can maintain our system. Our second policy position had always been the level of funding in the Transportation Regional Incentive Program, or TRIP program. Given the current budget situation, it seems a little difficult to be asking for funding to be increased for this program. So we have moved that as a standalone policy and merged it into policy position number 1, since they both are dealing with finance. We will be removing that bar chart that you have seen in past position or brochures, please. So then these are some of the other positions, and the first one has to do with allowing some flexibility with funding that is normally targeted to the strategic intermodal system. And there's no change proposed to that. This is a long-standing policy asking that funding that is normally used on the SIS, if it can be used on a facility that is near the SIS and will benefit the SIS, count it as part of the funding that benefits the SIS. The second policy position on this screen relates to transit. And we have always been very supportive of flexibility for transit funding and giving transit a better opportunity to compete for funding. Given what has happened this year with the pandemic and transit agencies finding that a lot of people don't want to get on a crowded bus and be that close to other individuals, they're finding themselves financially squeezed. We added some clarifying language, which at the time of our meeting, the direction was given that we would try to align our policy position with the Florida Public Transportation Association. And they're asking to waive the local match on funds that come from Florida DOT for operations, along with some other flexibilities. These two are ones that we've had in previous years and we're not changing. They were included in this slide deck so that if you go back and look through the slide deck, you have all of our policy positions. I won't necessarily cover those today, but they're available for you so you have a full set of information. This is one that I'm very excited about, and this is, we have successfully gotten texting while driving banned 2 years ago. We are aiming for a please hands-free policy where you may not hold a cellular phone or other wireless communication device while driving. The bill sponsor 2 years ago for the texting while driving stated that he desired to have a fully hands-free bill, no cellular devices. Well, that individual will be Senate President in January. And so Senate President can generally move a policy position that they want. So we're optimistic that this will disappear from our list in future years. Obviously, this will be something that will make enforcement much easier for law enforcement. Also, it will obviously increase safety. We did move this to the second position on our list. And then we added a new policy position this year, and this is in light of the experiences that we have all had here in 2020, where the governor has waived the in-person requirements to the Sunshine Law and has allowed virtual meetings. We're asking that the Sunshine Law be modified to allow, during a declared emergency, automatically that local governments and all government entities for that matter be allowed to hold virtual meetings during the time of that emergency, plus a time period after that. The logic being that if you had a hurricane, not a tornado, a hurricane come through and destroy many of your municipal buildings, you may not have a facility with which to hold a meeting. And you would need some time to perhaps meet virtually while you were arranging for facilities. And you will see, once we start up with committee weeks in January, the return of the legislative newsletter. And I'm doing a little bit of a shameless plug for this. This is something that MPOAC staff produces every Saturday morning at the end of a legislative week. It is free. If you are not getting it and would like to receive it, please reach out to me and email me. I'm happy to share this with everyone. And you are welcome to share it with everyone. I just ask that you leave our logo on the top of the newsletter. At the front of it is a narrative about what occurred over the past week. And then behind it is a listing of bills related to transportation. It's in numerical order for your ease of finding a bill you may be tracking. And any changes to bills are highlighted with a red ink color. So you only need to read those updates and it won't have you reading an entire 13-page document by the end of the legislative session. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about earmarks and the experiences of that. Earmarks can be particularly dangerous and harmful to the MPO process. And I'm not talking about these kind of earmarks, but rather what are also known as budget turkeys. Now, in our current budget that started July 1st for the state of Florida, all of the earmarks, or almost all of the earmarks, were vetoed by the governor. And that was because there was a obvious understanding that finances were going to look very different than originally predicted as far back as January. This upcoming budget is rather slim. And because the budget will be slim, and that is statewide, not just transportation, but for all aspects, I have a feeling that earmarks will have a very difficult time being justified and funded. Well, the problem we run into with earmarks is that if an earmark is vetoed by the governor, the DOT is prohibited from taking any action on that item. And that is very difficult because basically if you have funding already in the transportation program for your project, and then you go for an earmark and the governor line item vetoes it, that money cannot be spent, any money on that project in the current year. Basically, your project is gone. And so the funding that you had, as well as the earmark you were pursuing, evaporate. So what I'm trying to explain to you is that while earmarks are generally a bad idea, in this coming budget cycle, I have a feeling they'll be a particularly bad idea. And so I'm doing a gentle request that you please not ask your members and colleagues to not pursue earmarks just because of the harmful effect it may have on that project and on the overall budget, please. It's also very damaging to the department in terms of their ability to fund other projects. And with that, I'd like to wrap it up and leave some time for Ryan and for questions. Oh, Mayor, I believe you are muted.
Mayor Tyler, and you're still muted, but I do not see
I
any hands up
believe
there. Oh, there we
mine.
go.
Okay. Ryan, I believe that's you. Ryan's next, isn't he?
Yes, Ryan Matthews. He's with People Smith and Matthews. He serves as part of the lobbying team for Metropolitan Orlando. And so we wanted to invite Ryan today so that he would be able to give us some of his insights, not only from the past session, but some of the things that we may be able to look forward to as we're preparing to do legislative priorities for this next year. Ryan?
Well, good morning. Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Alliance members. Thank you for having me this morning. I apologize for my lack of video, but I had a last-minute work trip, so I'm en route back to Tallahassee on the Turnpike currently. Carl really gave a round of the constraints and issues that we face as we're entering the 2021 legislative session. I'll give you a little bit about where we are and then try to talk a little bit about the mechanics of what a 2021 legislative session might look like. As Carl mentioned, the number one issue that we're going to be facing as a state for really the next 18 months to 2 years is a projected $5.5 billion budget deficit. That will, of course, run the gamut of all lines and silos of the Florida budget. We had a $93.2 billion budget passed during the 2020 legislative session. The governor ultimately vetoed $1 billion from that budget, which was the largest in the state's history because of the coronavirus pandemic. As we stand here in October, we are looking at a November 17th organizational session for the 2021 legislative session. At that time, the new leaders of the Florida Senate and Florida House will be installed. Senate President designate Wilton Simpson will become Senate President, and Speaker of the House designate Chris Sprowls will become Speaker of the Florida House. Again, with a $5.5 billion budget deficit and a looming pandemic, we will likely, because we have a March start to the 2021 legislative session, where we normally would begin committee week sometime in December, we will likely wait until after the new year to commence committee weeks in January. The benefit of having an organizational session in November is that we will start to learn in the weeks following committee chairmen, committee chairwomen, et cetera, of topics of interest, particularly transportation. So during this declared state of emergency, the governor has expanded spending and regulatory powers, if you will. He has asked all executive agencies to look at their budgets and go through a budgeting exercise, whereas there may be up to an 8 to 10% cut in the agency budget. So what does a 2021 legislative session look like from a policy perspective? I think Carl made a very salient point in that it will likely be dominated by governing in the time of a pandemic, and what does that look like? Certainly from a local government perspective and a local government entity perspective, the ability to continue to hold virtual meetings during a declared state of emergency would allow for the functions of government and those governmental entities to continue, whether it's during a once-a-century pandemic or a pretty regular hurricane season that we face as Floridians. I believe that a majority of the policies that we're going to see in the legislature will either directly relate to the coronavirus and or the massive budget crunch that we may be facing. So as we all wait till November 3rd on both the federal and state level, which will ultimately have multiple ramifications in terms of what the makeup of the legislature looks like in the state of Florida, we await most of the legislative leaders' policy proposals and areas of focus. They will come more in clear as we get into December and early January when bills will start to be filed. I will certainly be keeping Metroplan updated in terms of what is happening in the transportation space, and we will just move forward from there. And at that point, Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Ryan? Any hands raised, young lady?
I don't see any hands raised. Let's just give it 1 moment for staff or any of the members. If you have questions for either Ryan or Carl, this would be a good time. And there are no hands, Mr. Chairman.
Ryan, I am hoping that you traverse the turnpike safely and hope that it has a rainbow, and when you arrive in Tallahassee, you find the end of it.
Thank you, sir.
Member comments?
Well, I don't see any hands at this time for member comments. Again, I'll give it a second. And Mr. Chairman, if I may share, on yesterday, we received news that former City of Orlando Commissioner Daisy Lynham passed away. Daisy Lynham served on this committee and was this alliance, and was instrumental in helping us to get the work underway with the Coast to Coast Trail. Many of you may remember her, and so I just wanted to pass that along to those of you who may have served with her in this regional capacity.
Thank you so much, Virginia. And if possible, could you forward to me any plans made for memorials or anything of the sort? Daisy was a trailblazer, one of which I had the opportunity to follow some of those trails. So if you could forward that to me, I would be very appreciative. In my eyes, she's an icon in this region. So thank you. And
And
that's sad to hear.
loved by so very many people, and we will certainly keep you abreast of the information as we receive it.
Thank you so much. I believe our next meeting is scheduled for February 12th, 2021, and we will announce the location. And I believe some of that has to do with our need for some distancing, and if we are going to be needing to do it via this venue again. So please stay tuned to your devices so that you can be aware of what we need to do when we need to do it. Are there any final issues to be brought? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And since I didn't hear one, I'll make one. Meeting adjourned.
Thank
Second.
you, everyone.
Thank you so much for all of your attention and attention. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too,
Thank
Mayor.
you.